That's right. Bear down, Bears fans. It's time for another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast, Bears Banter, powered by Second City Gridiron. Bill Zimmerman with you. And little podcast going out a little late this week. I apologize. We had a little bit of a guest snafu. Things just didn't quite work out that should have worked out. And we are guestless right now. So you're just going to get a whole lot of me today. Podcast probably going to be a little bit shorter than usual, but we will try and get back on the guest plan as we always do. Just didn't work out. If somehow the guest comes through later, I may add a second part to this and throw it up on the podcast feed and on the YouTube page separately. But we will worry about that if we get there. But for now, I wanted to get some content out because this was a big week, a messy week, and it's definitely got some stuff worth talking about. I know this is getting recorded here on Thursday. We're going to push it out on Thursday afternoon. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the 49ers game, which is unfortunate because I really wanted to spend some time on this 49ers game, but I think you guys have heard enough about it. And the bottom line here from this 49ers game is, and I'm going to use it to kind of talk big picture. We're going to talk coaching. We're going to talk Ryan Poles. We're going to talk Kevin Warren. We're going to talk about kind of the overlying aspects of this coaching search and this Bears front office and where it's going from here, and we'll do our mailbag after that. So we'll do the traditional stuff here, but I'm not going to spend too much time on a 49ers game where the Bears absolutely got their asses kicked. Coaching staff got their asses kicked. The players got their asses kicked. Everyone got their asses kicked. It was a butt whooping, and there's not too much to talk about because to me, here's the things that come out from that, and this will directly lead into where we're talking on today's podcast. One, the coaching. The Bears were seriously out-coached in that game. The defensive scheme against Kyle Shanahan's offense was poor. Kyle Shanahan devoured it. George Kittle devoured it. Like there were aspects of effort, and we're going to get into that. But coaching, Washington got his ass kicked by Kyle Shanahan. Thomas Brown also got his ass kicked offensively. Looked a little better in the second half, but again, that's when the 49ers kind of take their foot off the gas at that point. So let's talk about what we talked about here with Thomas Brown. I said, even before Matt Eberflus was fired, that elevating Thomas Brown was the right decision to me because you've got to find out who your next coach is. Like, I want Thomas Brown to focus on Caleb Williams and only Caleb Williams down the stretch. And I get that. That makes sense. I'm not saying that is a bad thought process. But again, you need, more important than Caleb Williams' development in the month of December is Caleb Williams moving forward, 2025 and moving forward. So you have to nail this coach. You have to. You have to nail this coaching hire. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This can't be Matt Nagy, who was the best coach we've seen since Lovie Smith. I know you all hate him. He was the best coach we've had since Lovie Smith. That's not good enough. And maybe Matt Nagy would have been better with a guy like Caleb Williams, but we'll never know. He had Mitch Trubisky, he had Nick Foles, he had Andy Dalton. That's what Matt Nagy got. He didn't succeed with it. End of story. You need a better coach than Matt Nagy. You need one who's already has play calling experience. You can't make that risk again. I think it needs to be an offensive coach. If you're a Mike Vrabel guy, we'll talk about Vrabel here in a little bit, but you need to make sure this coach is the right coach for Caleb Williams. So now you've got Thomas Brown, who is going to get an interview 100%. Even before he was going to be the interim coach, he was going to get an interview for this Chicago Bears head coaching position. It was going to happen. So you've got to make sure that you have all the information that you can gather about Thomas Brown. And what is that information? Can he be a head coach? So with all that in mind, you've got to elevate him to the interim and see. And again, he got his ass kicked. And that's a huge data point for Ryan Poles and for Kevin Warren to determine if Thomas Brown can handle this job. And the answer after 1 week is no. No, he cannot. That's not a surprise. He was a passing game coordinator just about a month ago. That's insane, that kind of elevation. But They wanted to see what he could do, and he's going to move forward. And I expect Thomas Brown to get better. Will it be good enough? No, I don't think it will. But that was something you needed to do. To me, not elevating Thomas Brown to head coach and then interviewing him in January is a miss. That to me feels like a Bears thing to do, right? That feels like something. Like here's the thing. They knew they were going to fire John Fox. Like, you could have tried Vic Fangio as head coach there. You could have tried that out, and they got Vic Fangio to stay as defensive coordinator, but they lost him eventually to a head coach position. Like, there's things you can do. If you know you're going to make a move, and you know you have someone on the staff you're going to interview, you should see if they can actually be the head coach of the team. So they give Thomas Brown the shot. Again, I expect him to get better. That was a lot for him to take on in a week and a half. He did the best he could. They got their asses kicked. Now, it wasn't just Thomas Brown's fault. It was the players' fault. And I thought it was the players' fault probably more than Thomas Brown, because I thought that effort sucked by the players. I did not think they gave their full effort in that game. I think they kind of quit. I think they kind of mailed it in. And I know Lester Wiltfong, if you heard him on Bear and Balanced, he has a theory that the players were just kind of gassed emotionally from everything that happened, and they just came out flat because of it. I hope he's right. But to me, I still don't say that that's okay, because you're professionals. And you had 10 days to get over Matt Eberflus's firing. And you all seem pretty happy with Matt Eberflus's firing. I know they weren't tap dancing publicly, but they're all kind of like, oh, yeah, this is better with Thomas Brown. Like, they all said it. Oh, this is better. This is better. Well, I'll tell you what, Washington's defensive play calling was not better than Matt Eberflus's. I know we don't want to give Matt Eberflus any credit, but there was a downgrade there. There was a 100% downgrade there. But the players wanted him gone. I wanted him gone. Fans wanted him gone. Media, national and local media, everybody wanted him gone. We all got our wish. And it was the right move. I'm not questioning that. It was the right move. And Thomas Brown is the right move. But like I said before Thomas Brown got the position, it's probably going to fail because it's too much to ask. But you still have to ask it, because if he does turn your head and it isn't too much for him, well, then holy hell, you got yourself a potential great head coach on your hands. So you got to find that out. But the players' effort reflects poorly on Thomas Brown, unfortunately. And to me, it really reflects poorly on themselves and on Ryan Poles. And that's where we're going to get with, is this roster construction with Ryan Poles. So before I get into the roster and Ryan Poles, let's do coaching here. Because again, I don't want to spend too much time on the 49ers game. I just want to, everyone, and I think everyone would recognize and agree, that effort by the players was embarrassing. It was an embarrassing effort. They should all be humiliated. They should be holding their heads in shame Monday and Tuesday before they got back to work on Wednesday at Hallis Hall. That should be the attitude. And if it's not the attitude, then you've got some rot at the core of your team here, and you got to figure it out if you're Ryan Poles. But let's talk about this coaching hire, because Bill Belichick has gone to North Carolina. That has sparked a lot of things about the Chicago Bears and their coaching hire. I'll tell you a few things I've heard, few things that have been come out nationally from insiders, locally from people. We've got people put out, here's the Bears list of coaches. It's way too early for the Bears to have a list of coaches. That's not true. Do they have names that they're going to actually talk to? Of course they have that, but they don't have their list of coaches. That's not finalized. No chance that's true. Okay. But they are in a situation where they are ahead of the game here, and they can get organized and hit the ground running when they do this coaching search. Now, Bill Belichick, a lot of fans are upset. Seth Wickersham put out an article about Bill Belichick and the Bears wouldn't consider him. Okay. And here's the thing. I think that's a little misleading, because Bill Belichick was kind of pissed at the NFL because Bill Belichick left the New England Patriots and kind of thought that the offers would line up. I'm Bill Belichick. I'm the greatest coach in NFL history. Teams are going to want me. The only one that kind of wanted him was the Atlanta Falcons, and there was a whole issue over Rich McKay and who was going to have the most power, and Belichick expected him to have full reign everywhere, and the Falcons were like, well, that's not going to happen. He didn't want the Falcons job, and the whole thing fell apart if he wasn't going to be able to do whatever he wanted. So now he fast forwards a year, and he's like, all right, they're going to line up, And it hadn't really happened yet to that point for him. So when he starts flirting with the idea of college and things start happening with North Carolina, now here's the situation. Bill wants to coach next year. He does not want to take another year off, especially he's in his 70s. He has things he wants to do. If he wants to get back in the NFL, he wants to catch Don Shula's coaching record. If he gets into college, he's going to want to actually have time to establish something. Another year is a really long time when you're in your early to mid 70s, let's be honest. So he wants to get back into coaching. The NFL doesn't hire until January, but college football hires in December. So they don't mesh, right? Now, again, if Ohio State fires Ryan Day and Bill Belichick's in line for Ohio State, that's not going to happen until January because the Ohio State's in the playoff. But for the most part, these teams are making coaching decisions now. We're seeing Rich Rodriguez hired. We're seeing Dan Mullen hired. Obviously, we see Bill Belichick hired. They're making these decisions now because they need their coaches in here so they can start working on the transfer portal and getting their roster set for 2025. That's happening now. So Bill Belichick, if he's going to stay in the NFL, he kind of wants to know he's getting a job now. So, they put out feelers, whatever. It would not surprise me if not maybe Bill Belichick directly, but if somebody representing Bill Belichick or someone kind of reached out to Kevin Warren and kind of said, hey, what do you think of Bill Belichick? And here's the thing. I don't think the Bears weren't interested in Bill Belichick. I don't know, again, what exactly happened there, but the Bears want to do a full interview. The Bears don't want to be like, oh, yeah, we'll just hire Bill Belichick. Let's get it done today. No, that's not what they're going to do. They want to talk to Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, maybe Joe Brady, maybe Liam Cohen. Who knows who they want to talk to? I don't know who was on the list. I do know that there's interest in Ben Johnson. I believe that interest to be mutual. I don't know if it's going to get across the finish line. Maybe Ben Johnson bombs his interview and they don't think he's the right guy for the job. Maybe the Bears bomb the interview and Ben Johnson doesn't want to come here. There's plenty of things that could make it where Ben Johnson is not the Bears coach in 2025. But don't you want to talk to him if you're the Bears? Bill Belichick says, hey, I want to be your coach. If you're Kevin Warren, you say, that's great, Bill, but we also need to talk to Ben Johnson. We need to talk to the guy who is running an offense that we would love to see in Chicago. So Bill Belichick can't just be part of an interview process and then wind up with no job in 2025. So he starts kind of probably putting out feelers, seeing what's going on, and he kind of gets the idea that he may not get a coaching job again. Well, he doesn't want to deal with that. So he goes to North Carolina and says, I'm going to build up a program immediately and start competing for the ACC title immediately. That's his plan. We'll see if it works out. I'm excited to see what happens there. That's going to be fun. That's going to be an interesting storyline all college football season next year. But in terms of the Bears, you cannot fault the Bears here. People are just like, oh, typical Bears, malpractice. They don't know what they're doing. No, they do know what they're doing. They're not running to Bill Belichick because Bill Belichick can't wait till mid-January. They're telling Bill Belichick, we're going to interview you. We're going to interview Mike Vrabel. We're going to interview Ben Johnson. We're going to interview whoever else we want to interview. And if we choose you, then we'd love to have you be part of this organization, but we may not. And that's not what Bill Belichick wants to hear. So he went to college. So malpractice by the Bears with Bill Belichick? No, you're misguided if that's what you think, 100%. So I am actually on board with what the Chicago Bears did here, not running to Bill Belichick. They didn't say they wouldn't listen to Bill Belichick. They wouldn't consider Bill Belichick. They just don't want to do it now. And he needed to know now. So the way this coaching hire is going, here's the one thing I think is a little misguided. And I think it's a little misguided from local Bears media. And I think it's misguided from national NFL media. The line came out from Ryan Poles that they want a leader of men. That's what we heard. And I guess that's a knock on Matt Eberflus that he was not a leader of men. They want a leader of men. You know what every team wants? A leader of men. I don't think any team has ever hired a head coach going, well, he's not a leader of men. He is going to be a disaster in this locker room. But hey, he's really good at calling defensive plays, or he's really good at calling offensive plays. So we'll be okay. But we know he's a debacle in the locker room. No, I think everyone expects how they lead is going to be different. obviously, but nobody goes into it. No GM goes into it thinking their coach is going to be a crappy leader. But yes, so the Bears want a leader of men. So I think a lot of people just went, well, that's Mike Vrabel. The Bears want Mike Vrabel. That's code for Mike Vrabel. And I don't think that's at all what it is. They think leadership is an important aspect of the job. But they also know that they have to get this coaching hire right for Caleb Williams. No ifs, ands, or buts. They have to find the right coach for Caleb Williams. Is Mike Vrabel the right coach for Caleb Williams? If they make that decision, then we're going to have to see if they're right. But I don't think he's the right coach. Mike Vrabel is a hard ass, guys. And you said, that's what the Bears need. They need a hard ass. Okay, that's fine if that's your opinion. You guys who all want Mike Vrabel probably are the same guys ripping Mike Ditka. Mike Ditka was 1980s Mike Vrabel. It's the same thing, except Mike Ditka was more of an offensive coach. Vrabel's more of a defensive coach. But it's the same kind of aspect. So if you want to go back to Ditka, okay, Mike Ditka won here, so that's fine. But Mike Vrabel power struggles with the front office. Mike Vrabel, when I say Mike Vrabel will go against the grain of Kevin Warren and Ryan Post, we're like, that's what they need. No, it's not what they need. Mike Vrabel is a difficult guy to have in a system, right? In a whole cohesive unit. It's not great. Now, again, Mike Vrabel's going to get hired. I've heard a lot of rumbles it's going to be the Raiders. We'll see. Easy tie there. Tom Brady, now a part owner there. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You could see that happening. But in terms of Mike Vrabel to the Bears being a can't-miss hire, I'd be really concerned with Mike Vrabel. Now, I know Arthur Smith was his offensive coordinator and did great things with Ryan Tannehill. But you know who else was his offensive coordinator and ran a crappy offense? Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur's offense sucked for Tennessee because Mike Vrabel runs a defensive-minded coach. Y'all hated the way Matt Eberflus wanted his offense run. You think Mike Vrabel's any different? Mike Vrabel's not any different. Mike Vrabel is a good coach, but you guys are making it out like he's won 3 Super Bowls. Come on, man. Now, again, he might be the right fit. I'm not anti-Mike Vrabel. I don't think it's the right call for this situation. All right. If Mike Vrabel was available 3 years ago, I wouldn't have necessarily been against it then. But, they went with Matt Eberflus because Bill Polian wanted to try and get his buddies hired. So that's what he does. Those committees, the get a consultant in, like Ernie Accorsi. How do you think John Fox ended up with the job? Because Ernie Accorsi worked with him with the Giants. They're friends. Ernie Accorsi's a great guy, nice man. I've known him a little bit. But John Fox was here because Ernie Accorsi knew him. Bill Polian, Jim Caldwell, Matt Eberflus from the Colts organization. What? It's stupid that they do this stuff. Luckily, that's not going to be the case here. Kevin Warren is here. Ryan Poles is here. They're going to go through this. They're going to make the coaching hire. So when we're looking at this, Mike Vrabel might work if he becomes the coach here. But I think it's really odd to think, I really, tweet at me at Bill T. Zimmerman. Tweet at me, X me, post me, whatever the hell it is now. Why do you think Mike Vrabel is the best coach for Caleb Williams? Not for the Bears, for Caleb Williams, because I don't see it. I don't see why Caleb Williams needs a hard-ass defensive coach, grabbing him by the face mask and headbutting him and telling him what to do. I don't think that's the right coach for Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams needs an offensive-minded guy that they can sit in the QB room together and just nerd out. That's why I think Ben Johnson, and I think Ben Johnson can control a room. Ben Johnson has been probably learning a lot from Dan Campbell. That matters a lot. So I think that's a very positive thing here for the Chicago Bears and this coaching hire potentially, is that Ben Johnson is that offensive nerd that Caleb Williams needs, but has also been with Dan Campbell for several years and has seen how Dan Campbell has created this culture and how to rally a team. And that's not saying that Ben Johnson's going to be the same way. I don't expect Ben Johnson to talk about biting kneecaps or whatever the hell Dan Campbell did in his introductory press conference. But I do think he's going to take some aspects of what Dan Campbell does as a leader and use it for himself. That's absolutely what people do when they grow and learn and take new positions. So when I sit here and hear people say it's Mike Vrabel or bust, I don't understand that mentality. I don't understand how you can possibly think that's the right coach for Caleb Williams. Another name I hear a lot is John Gruden. And to me, that is a laughable name. Laughable. First of all, John Gruden wasn't a good coach for a very long time. Like, this isn't like here, let me bring up John Gruden's coaching record. This is the guy that everybody wants. John Gruden, and what he's done. I get it. He won a Super Bowl. Good for John Gruden. John Gruden won a Super Bowl. He comes to Tampa Bay, wins a Super Bowl in his first year with Tony Dungy's defense. That was a defensive-oriented team. The offense was okay. He's an offensive guy. The offense was okay. Now, let's see what happens with John Gruden here in Tampa. They go from 12-4 to 7-9 to 5-11. Then they jump up to 11-5. Then they drop to 4-12, like 4-12. They got steadily worse until he finally gets fired. He comes back to the Oakland Raiders, 4-12, 7-9, 8-8, then gets fired midseason when they're at 500 again, going absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere with John Gruden. And he gets fired. Why did he get fired? For making racist comments. You think, and people are like, oh, George McCaskey shouldn't meddle. George McCaskey isn't meddling. That's why Kevin Warren is here. We're going to talk about Kevin Warren. But you think George McCaskey, who thinks equality is important and has made statements about equality, and it is not a coincidence for the Chicago Bears that they have a person of color at president and a person of color at general manager. Like, this is an important thing for George McCaskey. He wants this to be part of his legacy, that he is not part of the old boys club. That's important to him. You think he's going to turn around and hire John Gruden, who made racist comments and lost his job? That's what you think George McCaskey should do? Not even if he would do it. You think he should do it? That's who you want leading this team, John Gruden? You and I aren't going to disagree with that one. You and I, we are not going to agree. We are not going to agree about John Gruden, and I don't think George McCaskey would ever consider. If Kevin Warren went to him because we want to hire John Gruden, and I think George McCaskey would say, that's the best you can do? Really? I don't think that's going to happen. So that one surprises me. Now, what I will say is I think Ben Johnson's interested. I don't think there's a guarantee Ben Johnson's going to get here. I also think, and I thought this, and I've mentioned this before, that I think the Bears will actually do what it takes to bring in a coach next year. And now Brad Biggs has put it in his column that the Bears will do what it takes and they will be able to open up the checkbooks for a coach. So, and I think that's about Ben Johnson, because you're going to have to pay Ben Johnson. I don't know if it's going to be $15 million a year. It might be, but I think you're going to have to go at least 12. That's why when you hear me, I usually say 6 years, $75 million. That's the kind of deal I think that Ben Johnson's going to be looking for. Again, it might have to be $80 million. We'll see, but I don't think it's going to be 6 years, 90, something like that. 7 years, 105. I don't think it's going to be that much, but I do think it's going to have to be a lot more than the Bears have ever paid. So I think McCaskey is willing to say, yes, we will pay a coach that much money. I think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to be an issue this year. I really believe it. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'm pretty critical of this organization. So if I think that, I think that's a pretty positive thing to say there. If I think the Bears are actually going to be willing to pay a head coach. So if they're willing to pay and they're willing to talk to Ben Johnson and they're willing to meet him halfway on some things, I think there's a good chance that it happens. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, Ben Johnson doesn't like what he sees, the Bears don't like what they hear, they just don't think it's the right fit, whatever it might be, I think at that point, it is wild, wild west. Who the hell knows what the Chicago Bears are going to do at the head coaching job at that point? I really don't know. Like, I'm not saying it's Ben Johnson or bust. I don't think Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles are entering the coaching search that way. I think it would be a really bad way to enter the coaching search. You can have a favorite that you're hoping to hire, but you better come in with an open mind with all the coaches. That's how you make a bad hire. So I do want him to interview 5, 6, 7 people. I do want him to interview a defensive coach or two, multiple different offensive coaches. What do you want to do with Caleb Williams? How would you lead the locker room? How would you defeat the culture of losing? Like, you want to get different opinions here. Like, it's important. So I think they're going to do an extensive search, and we'll see where they end up here in January, maybe February, depending on who is the next coach and maybe how far they advance in the NFL playoffs. So now let's get to the front office here. Let's get to Kevin Warren and let's get to this Ryan Poles roster construction, because I think there are some things here that are worth talking about. Let me take a slug of water here. Talking 25 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit longer here. No guests. You get a lot of me. So keep, nails on a chalkboard to your ears. I'm sorry, but that's the way it goes. So let's talk about Kevin Warren, and then we'll talk about Ryan Poles in this roster construction. I know everybody wants a boogeyman. I get it. You need someone to point the fingers at. You can't always point them at George McCaskey. You need someone else to point the fingers at. So you point him at Kevin Warren, and I don't understand why. I don't get it. I talked about this a little bit last week. I think Kevin Warren being here is an excellent thing for the Chicago Bears organization. And I don't understand why a lot of people think it isn't, because I think everyone agrees. I think it's a consensus that Ted Phillips was a bad president. There's one local, we'll call him media guy out there, blogger out there, who loves Ted Phillips. We all know who he is. But other than him, I think everybody else thinks Ted Phillips was a bad president. What'd he do? Nothing. The Bears were profitable. A chimpanzee could make the Bears profitable because they're in the NFL. It's not hard. It's not hard to make money when you're an NFL franchise. It really isn't. Not too hard at all. But Ted Phillips made money, and he botched the Soldier Field remodel. That's what he did. That's his entire 20-year tenure. That's it. So he was a bad president. When Ted Phillips is a bad president and knows nothing about football, and George McCaskey is the chairman and knows nothing about football, George McCaskey's, I'm a fan. I know nothing about football. He says it openly in press conferences. So when that happens, who's holding the GMs accountable? Who sits there and says, who can assess if the GM is doing a good job? You don't have to, as a team president, you don't have to be involved in the draft. You don't have to be sitting there going, should the Bears draft Mason McCormick in the 4th round, or should they draft Torrey Taylor? Now, that's not what you want a president doing. That's why you have a general manager. That's why you have a college scouting department. That's why those people exist. But this is corporate structure. You need someone to hold the guy below you accountable. Doesn't mean he has to be able to do everything in his job aspect, but he has to have an understanding of what his job is and how he can go about doing it. So when you look at it that way, Ted Phillips and George McCaskey could not do it. And that is why usually they held on to GMs too long, especially with Ryan Pace. Everyone knew after 2020 that move had to be made, but they gave him an extra year, and that extra year made a big mess for Ryan Poles for a couple of years to try and clean up this mess. Was the extra year of what Ryan Pace did to try and save his job. So you need a president who can assess the general manager. Doesn't mean he's going to meddle in everything, but he's going to be involved in the general manager and the head coaching search. So Kevin Warren is here. And look, if you talk to football guys, they're not going to like Kevin Warren, because Kevin Warren's a football guy. Kevin Warren isn't a football guy. A football guy is a scout, is a coach. That's a football guy. Kevin Warren has been around football. Kevin Warren has been an executive with the Vikings, with the Rams. Dick Vermeil said that Kevin Warren was a critical, not recently, unprovoked 20 years ago. Kevin Warren was a critical part of the St. Louis Rams winning the Super Bowl. I don't know what he did, but Dick Vermeil's not just going to offer that up because he just likes the guy. No, he's going to say it if he believes it. So Kevin Warren is an executive, and he's been around football for a long time, which means he has a lot of contacts around the league. He's seen how organizations are run well. He's seen how organizations are run poorly. And he is trying to bring that knowledge to the Bears and run the Bears like a proper franchise. And I think things have improved, even if they haven't improved on the field, which is more Ryan Poles' department. Kevin Warren hasn't sitting there and meddled and told him he can't sign this guy, or he has to sign this guy, or he has to draft this guy. No, he's involved where he's making phone calls and welcoming Caleb Williams to the team, but he is not sitting here. He did not make a decision on Karan Amagaji. He's not involved in that way. So Kevin Warren is here to hold Ryan Poles accountable and to make sure that the right hires are being made at high-end positions, like the coach. Why is that a bad thing? Why are you guys against Kevin Warren doing exactly what Ted Phillips couldn't do? Are you mad that they don't have a stadium yet? Like, what is the rush? What is the rush here? They're making sure they do this right. And again, Kevin Warren didn't buy the land in Arlington Heights. And who knows, with the tax stuff getting settled, maybe that becomes a viable plan again. But do you think the tax stuff got settled because Kevin Warren was sitting there begging and pleading? No, it got settled because he pivoted to Chicago and said, well, if that's how it's going to be, we're not even going to consider Arlington Heights. And he started talking to the mayor. And Arlington Heights kind of went, all right, here's the tax situation you wanted. Because that's called negotiating. That's what he's doing. He's taking his time. I think in the end, and this is going to take a long process, I think we're going to have a decision on this before the Bears 2025 season tips off. I don't know if it's going to be July, May, February, but I think we're going to see something settle here in the next 8 months for this stadium situation. And I don't even know where it's going to be. But I think Kevin Warren's taking his time, slowly applying pressure, and seeing how he can get the best situation for the Bears financially and the best, stadium that they can build. So I'm okay with the slow process here. I don't know why people needed the shovel in the ground immediately. And it's got to be Arlington Heights. Why? Because Ted Phillips wanted Arlington Heights? Is like, are we seriously there? Ted Phillips goes out and says, let's get this piece of property in Arlington Heights. He hasn't done anything right in 20 years. Kevin Warren comes in and goes, maybe not, and you guys are pissed? Why? Why does anything Ted Phillips ever does get the benefit of the doubt? Why? Like, what are you guys possibly thinking here? I don't understand it. So let this play out with Kevin Warren. This is a slow process here. And let's see what happens with this coaching search with him and Ryan Poles. And that's where we'll wrap up here until we get to the mailbag with Ryan Poles and the situation with him as general manager. And again, and I will say this at the beginning, as I am about to rip Ryan Poles to pieces, let me just say that I think Ryan Poles should keep his job, because I do not want a new GM with a new head coach in here who have no allegiances to Caleb Williams. I cannot repeat that process again. I cannot do what we did to Justin Fields again. I cannot. Would Justin Fields have worked out here if it was a better situation? Maybe. Probably not. Maybe. Who knows? But it certainly didn't help with any of this. Certainly didn't help Mitch Trubisky either. Certainly didn't help any of the previous quarterbacks having this much instability. So I am for Ryan Poles keeping his job, because I do think there are some things that Ryan Poles has done well. But Ryan Poles has made a lot of mistakes. And even if he hasn't made flat out mistakes, his successes aren't overwhelming successes. And that's my biggest concern, is the lack of overwhelming successes. And I talked about it in my Hot Take Tuesday column. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here, a little more extensively. If you're going to win Super Bowls, you need blue chip talent. All right. And I think you all know this, but in case you don't, blue chippers are great, outstanding difference makers. There's only, 75 of them, 100 of them in the league, maybe 125. Great. A lot of bad teams don't have any. Mediocre teams have one or two. Playoff teams have 2 or 3. Great teams have 5, maybe 6. Like, that's it. Like, you don't need 15 blue chippers. That doesn't happen. You need 5 blue chippers to be great. Like, look at the great teams. Look at the Eagles. A.J. Brown, blue chipper. Jalen Carter, blue chipper. Saquon Barkley, blue chipper. Lane Johnson, blue chipper. Like, there you go. Then already at that point, you're starting to run out of blue chippers. Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen Hurts is a red chipper. I don't think he's a blue chipper. You're already running out of blue chippers on that Eagles team. And that's a great team. There's probably maybe another one on the Jason Kelsey's gone. He was a blue chipper, and he was part of that too. Well, he wasn't there with Saquon, but you get the point. There's not that many on teams. Maybe I'm missing one, but yeah, 5, 6, that's it on great teams. Then you need a handful of red chippers. That's where you get red chippers. Very good players, not great players, but very good players. If I look at the Bears, I can reel off a lot of red chippers. Darnell Wright, maybe borderline red chipper, maybe just below it, still borderline red chipper. Cole Kmet at his position, probably a red chipper. Montez Sweat, definitely a red chip guy. Like, they've got some on there. But what the Bears don't have is a lot of blue chippers. They got one. His name is Jalen Johnson. Did Ryan Poles draft Jalen Johnson? No. Ryan Poles negotiated that contract hard with Jalen Johnson to the point where at the trade deadline, he told Jalen Johnson, go find a trade partner. If you can get a 1 or an early 2, see ya. Teams weren't willing to give that up for him at that point. So they kept him and re-signed him, and now he's here long-term. But his best player, he was willing to part with if an early second-round pick. I believe they got a late 2. They didn't get an early 2. I think the San Francisco 49ers, who were going to be like the 61st, 62nd, 63rd pick, I think they offered a late second for Jalen Johnson. Had that been a late 1, he'd be gone. Wouldn't be on this team anymore. Ryan Poles was willing to trade his only blue chip player for a draft pick. And that's where you sit there and go, where kind of high-end eye for talent does he have? Because when you look at, now Braxton Jones is a great find. He's not even a red chipper. You know, you got blue, you got red, then you've got that pretty good above average range, and then you've got, you know, everyone below that. So when you look at this team and who he's brought in, he didn't want to pay David Montgomery, but then he paid DeAndre Swift. And he paid DeAndre Swift more money than he would have paid David Montgomery. He didn't want to pay James Daniels, who had a nice little stretch there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't want to keep Roquan Smith. Didn't want to pay Roquan Smith, but then he paid Tremaine Edmonds. Roquan Smith, better player than Tremaine Edmonds. Tremaine Edmonds he's been better this year. Last year, he sucked. Tremaine Edmonds was true. It was a terrible signing. He's been better this year. I haven't criticized him. He was laughably bad against George Kittle. That's why he's here. Big, tall guy, supposed to be difficult to throw the ball in the middle of the field with Tremaine Edmonds. Not on Sunday. Laughably bad. So when we sit here and we look at a team where it's got a lot of good players, maybe some in the red chip category. Brisker's good. Gordon's good. Tyreek Stevenson, if he ever gets his head out of his ass, maybe he'll be good again. He was good. He's not anymore. Kevin Byard, free agent signing. Good. Jalen Johnson, blue chipper from Ryan Pace. Thank you, Ryan Pace. Tremaine Edmonds, pretty good. TJ Edwards, good. Trevon Dexter, good. Billings, good. Good across the board. Well, you know what good gets you? Good gets you 9-8. That's what that gets you. Maybe 10-7. That doesn't get you 12-5. That doesn't get you competing for the big trophy. That big silver football on the tote, whatever the hell the thing is, right? The Lombardi Trophy. That doesn't get you there. You need true difference makers. What true difference makers has he drafted? Now, we don't get to judge Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze yet. It's too early. It's not fair. Darnell Wright, 3rd year is a big year for tackles. So he could really develop into maybe a red chip guy. That would be great to see. But where else? Where else? DJ Moore, red chip. Not more than that. He's not going to be a blue chip guy at this point in his life. Now, again, Rome Odunze becomes a blue chip guy with DJ Moore, blue chip, red chip there, red chip with Caleb, with Cole Kmet and a blue chip in Caleb Williams. Well, hell, then you got a freaking offense if you can build an offensive line. So what Ryan Poles has done is kind of the same thing Ryan Pace has done. He's found a lot of pretty good players. And pretty good players, what did that happen? When they stopped overachieving after 2018. Gets you 8-8. That's what Ryan Poles did. Ryan Poles found a lot of talent to go 8-8. Now, Ryan Pace, 8-8. Ryan Poles, he hasn't even found that much yet because he's had now 3 straight losing seasons, which Ryan Pace did too. Ryan Pace didn't have a winning season until season 4. So we'll see with a new coach in here and second-year Caleb Williams what they can accomplish next year. And if Rome Odunze develops and Wright develops and these guys develop, maybe Dexter takes another step. I doubt it. But if these guys develop into some more red chip and a couple guys develop into blue chip guys, then I can put my foot in my mouth and shut up. But right now we're looking at a roster that doesn't have a lot of true difference makers. It has a bunch of pretty good players, which means you're going to compete most weeks. You're going to win more than you lose, but you're going to get bounced in the first or second round of the playoffs. You're not going to be in conference championship game. Excuse me. See, this is what happens when you talk for 40 straight minutes. Eventually, your throat dries out. Yeah, it's just not going to get you championships. And that's what we want here with Caleb Williams is championships. We want to see the culture actually change. And right now, we haven't seen it. And it's frustrating when Ryan Poles talks about how he is here to break cycles. And right now, what we have seen is with general manager Jerry Angelo, after 3 years, what did he do? He fired Dick Duran. Enter Phil Emery, here for 3 years. What did he do after 3 years? Well, he didn't get the choice because he got fired too, but Mark Trestman got fired. Enter Ryan Pace. What happened after 3 years? John Fox gets fired. Enter Ryan Poles. What happens after 3 years? Matt Eberflus gets fired. Then we repeat the cycle. Rex Grossman drafted. Year 1 coach Dick Duran, year 2 coach Lovie Smith. Mitch Trubisky gets drafted. Year 1 coach John Fox, year 2 coach Matt Nagy. Justin Fields gets drafted. Year 1 coach Matt Nagy, year 2 coach Matt Eberflus. Caleb Williams gets drafted. Year 1 coach Matt Eberflus, year 2 coach we will see. For a guy who said he was going to break cycles, he has put the Bears directly in the exact same cycle, which is why Matt Eberflus needed to be fired at the end of the 2023 season. And whether that was Ryan Poles' decision or George McCaskey and Kevin Warren saying they're not firing a guy who's got the defense on the rise and has got 3 years left on his contract after the GM says that's not the right quarterback. Again, I don't know exactly how it went down at the end of last season, but what I do know is the wrong decision was made. All right. I think I have babbled enough. So let me take a break. We will get on the other side and we will answer questions from the mailbag. This is Bill Zimmerman, Bears Banter. We'll be right back. All right. Welcome back into Bears Banter. Before we get to the mailbag, let's tell you about Underdog Fantasy, because Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million that's OVER, over 5 million happy players and $2 billion with a B dollars won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Complete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. Now, my favorite game on Underdog Fantasy, I know you all want to know what I play. I like to play Red Zone Rush. Can't find it anywhere but Underdog Fantasy. All you got to do, swipe right for yes or left for no if the player that pops up is going to score a touchdown. It's that easy, and if you enter, you automatically get a 51% profit boost when you play. So join the 5 million fans that have already playing on Underdog. It's available in 33 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. They've got your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. You can create entries with all football selections, or you can mix and match against other sports, whatever you want to do. If you want to play Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code CITY. That's our Second City Gridiron promo code. Really appreciate it if you use that, and let Underdog Fantasy know that you are a listener of Second City Gridiron and you are joining Underdog Fantasy thanks to their partnership with us. So use the code CITY, CITY, when you deposit, and you will get $1,000 in bonus cash instantly if you use the promo code CITY. Again, CITY. Now, you have to be 18 or over to play Underdog Fantasy, 19 or over in Alabama and Nebraska, and 19 or over in Colorado for some of the games, 21 or over in Massachusetts and Arizona. Got to be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. And if you're concerned with your play, 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, you can dial 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 800-639-8783, or text 53342 for Next Step. In New York, the 24/7 Hope line is 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or you can text HOPE-NY 467-369. So again, Underdog Fantasy, very excited to have them a part of Second City Gridiron. Okay, let's get to the mailbag. Let's get into some questions here. We got plenty of stuff to talk about. So let's dive into it here and just getting the mailbag questions up. And of course, I have them on my phone because that's what I do. Let's start with our friend Chris Armstrong. Is Ryan Poles safe? Well, Chris, I would have a really hard time imagining that Ryan Poles is not safe after Kevin Warren just straight out said, Ryan Poles is leading this and I'm going to support him for the coaching search. Like, what's the difference if the Bears lose out? You've already committed to Ryan Poles. They're in the middle of a huge slump. The coaching staff is a mess. You've already committed to him. So I have a hard time believing anything else that could have happened here could have impacted what the Chicago Bears and Kevin Warren are going to do moving forward for 2025. So yes, I believe Ryan Poles is safe. Again, I don't think it's a slam dunk, but I do think stability is important around Caleb Williams. All right, Ed Helinsky, which players, coaches, and front office personnel deserve a lump of coal from Santa? Everyone. I mean, especially coming off that 49ers game, who doesn't deserve a lump of coal? I mean, look, does Caleb Williams deserve a lump of coal? No, he's going to have literally one of the top 5 passing seasons in Bears history as a rookie. And that's us saying he's probably a little disappointing. We probably hoped he would be a little better than he's been. Again, victim of circumstance, sure. But, lump of coal there, probably not. Where else can we look? Kyler Gordon, maybe not a lump of coal. I mean, we're already running out of names. No one on the coaching staff, that's for sure. Like, it's rough to find guys who don't deserve a lump of coal this year, Ed. It's a rough season. All right. At B Potters 95, who will the Bears' first pick in the draft be? Well, I think that's going to be interesting. I think that's going to depend exactly on where they end up. I think they're probably going to end up with around the 9th pick or so. And that's going to limit them in terms of really high-end guys. Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. I think he would be a phenomenal pick, but I don't think he's going to get it to 9. We're a little early here to know exactly how this thing is going to unfold. I think you're going to have 2 quarterbacks go in the top 5. I think you're going to have Travis Hunter go in the top 5. You're going to have a couple corners. There's a couple really good corners. You're going to have, like the Arizona wide receiver, McMillan. He's going to go in the top, 6, 7, 8, I would think. So there's some guys there that you can be confident, but like offensive linemen, there's not a really long tackle. There's Will Campbell from LSU. I really like Will Campbell, but he's got shorter arms. Maybe he's going to be a guard at the NFL level. You want to take a guard at 9 or 10? I think you could justify it. Will Campbell's going to be awesome for 15 years. I'm confident in it. So maybe that's where they go. Mason Graham would be good. There's a few good edges, but again, where do these edges fall into play? But I will guarantee in December that the first pick the Bears take in the first round, whoever their first pick is, will be a defensive or an offensive lineman. I guarantee it. All right. What else can we get to? Jason Black, if Bears hire someone like Vrabel, how do you feel about Josh McDaniels as OC? He's been a head coach twice, probably doesn't have aspirations to do it again. I think that's something you'd have to look for in hiring a defensive-minded head coach. I get the idea, Jason, about finding a good offensive coordinator that doesn't have aspirations to be a head coach or wouldn't get another opportunity. Josh McDaniels is not who we want in Chicago. I get he had success with Tom Brady. That guy's a snake. He screwed over the Colts. He is a bad guy. I'm sorry. I'll just say it. I think Josh McDaniels is a bad guy, and I would not want him part of the Bears organization. Oak Lightning, do you think Poles should get fired? What do you think of his team building? Well, I went over most of it already. Oak Lightning. No, I should not. I do not think he should be fired, but I do think we should question what he's done so far. I certainly don't think, I don't think it's a slam dunk with what he's done so far. Carl Grace, I keep hearing about the top 4 head coach candidates, but who do you think would be 4 possibles not named that might be interviewed? I'm not sure who the 4 are. Obviously Johnson, obviously Vrabel. Is that Belichick, who obviously isn't a possibility anymore? I'm not sure who for it. To me, it's been 2. It's been Johnson and Vrabel. I know we hear Joe Brady. You hear Liam Cohen. All I'm going to say, Carl, is, and it might be tough to find, scroll back a few weeks because it was before Eberflus got fired. I gave you some coaching candidates. I gave you guys I thought the Bears would consider interviewing, but probably wouldn't strongly consider. I gave you some candidates. I gave you some dark horse. There's like 12 names on there. Kind of a cop-out answer, Carl, but it's too early right now. Bears are still doing homework on guys. There's not a firm list. It's one that's in progress right now. But again, I think Johnson, I think Vrabel will get interviews. I would expect Joe Brady to get an interview. Beyond that, maybe Liam Cohen. I think the Bears were impressed with him in the offensive coordinator interview. Thomas Brown's going to get an interview. Like, we're already up to 5-6 names there. So that's where I would kind of look at. Put me on blast. Moving forward past the coaching search, what realistic signings and draft moves would you like to see the Bears make so we can improve this putrid offensive line? Start here. Make Trey Smith the highest paid guard in the NFL. Well, I do think there is a good chance that Trey Smith is available. And again, you hear some people say, well, the Chiefs are going to sign Trey Smith 100%. I don't know if that's the case because they've already committed to Creed Humphrey. They've already committed to Joe Thuney. They've already committed to one of their tackles. Like, they've already put out big salaries on 3 guys. They're going to do it for 4. I don't think they're going to cut any of these guys where they could open up more space. I just don't know if they're willing to pay 4 offensive linemen. Trey Smith did have some medical issues in college. Maybe that impacts if the Chiefs are willing to give him a large sum of cash. I would be on board with a Trey Smith signing. Even if Trey Smith isn't available, they need to go out. They need to get the best guard available on the market. Whoever Ryan Poles and the player personnel department deems the best guard on the free agent market, they go out and sign him. That's 1. 2, they then have to draft. I brought up Will Campbell. If you're going to use your first-round pick, second-round pick, again, too early to talk about second-round picks, but there are always very strong second-round picks available. The Bears are going to have, 2 picks there from between 32 and 33 and 43, somewhere in there, with the Carolina Panthers pick and their pick. So they're going to have an opportunity there to select another interior offensive lineman. Center, they're kind of screwed. Parker Brailsford just said he's going to return to Alabama. That was a guy a lot of people thought maybe would be a guy the Bears could target in like the 3rd round. The free agent center class sucks. The draft center class sucks. Last year was the year to go out and get a center. Ryan Poles didn't do it. They are not going to have a good center next year. They're going to have Coleman Shelton or they're going to have Ryan Bates. Maybe they go out and get someone else who's a little better, but you're not going to have a good center. And I assume you're going to have Darnell Wright, and I assume at this point you're going to have Braxton Jones. He's going to have 1 year left on his deal. You're not going to probably move away from Braxton Jones. Amagaji has not flashed enough. In fact, now they're playing Amagaji at guard. Maybe they're not seeing him as a tackle anymore. So interesting there. I think you're going to have Braxton Jones. I think you're going to have Tevin Jenkins. I think Tevin Jenkins is gone. You have Jones and Wright on the outside. I think you're going to have a starting rookie at one of the guard spots. I think you're going to have a Trey Smith type at the other guard spot, and you're going to have a weak center. And that should be better. It's not going to be it's not going to be a top 5 unit. It's not going to be anything special like that. But yeah, it's certainly going to be better than what it was this year. Evan Lepeau, who was in charge before Jerry Angelo? How was Ted involved? Oh, all right. Well, let's talk about this. I love talking about the Bears' history and its patheticness, and it's very pathetic. So let's dive into this. If you're going to talk about what the Bears' power structure was before Jerry Angelo, you have to go all the way back to George Halas, because George Halas hired Mike Ditka in 1982. And why does that matter? That matters because Jim Finks, who was a phenomenal general manager, Jim Finks did not have a say in the coach. George Halas just said Mike Ditka's the coach. Jim Finks says, "Do I got to say?" George Halas said no. Jim Finks got pissed. Jim Finks basically finished out his contract and left. The last thing he did, the 1983 draft, which was the foundation for the 85 Bears. Go look at it. Phenomenal draft. Tons of starters, Hall of Fame players. Richard Dent in the 8th round. Willie Gault. Just a fantastic draft. Jim Finks leaves because he's pissed off. So the Bears bring in Jerry Vanisi as a GM. Jerry Vanisi Not very good, honestly. He was fine, but Jerry Vanisi had a great relationship with Mike Ditka. Why does that matter? Because Jerry Vanisi and Mike Ditka teamed up, got Doug Flutie in 1986 when Jim McMahon was out for the year, and Flutie was terrible. And Mike McCaskey blamed Jerry Vanisi's relationship with Mike Ditka as to how that happened. So Mike McCaskey says, I'm done with general managers, and fires Jerry Vanisi and says, I can do it myself. Oops. And that leads us to one of the worst stretches in Chicago Bears history. That started about 87 or 88. That's when the Bears were still good, and they slowly went downhill for the next 5 years. Bill Tobin was in there, and kind of McCaskey leaned on him. And by 1992, Bill Tobin was out. The Bears sucked. Ditka was out, and Mike McCaskey goes, I'm hiring Dave Wannstedt, and we'll do it myself. So in 1993, it's Wani and it's McCaskey. And Wani comes in, and they finally say, you know what? Let's elevate Rod Graves. Rod Graves was one of their scouts, and he might have been like a director at some point. They elevate him to director of player personnel. But he's not GM. He doesn't have say on anything. He's just kind of in charge of what they should do. So he's there for 3 years. And again, now this is the 90s. The Bears were awful in the 90s. They never had a good team. If they did, they went 9-7 and snuck into the playoffs. Awful. Awful. Why? Because they didn't have a general manager. Because Mike McCaskey thought he was, actually good at doing stuff. He was not. So Rod Graves is in there. Now, I'm always curious with the Rick Meyer trade in 1996. Who exactly was the problem there? Because the way I understand it, Dave Wannstedt was fine with Rick Meyer. Dave Wannstedt was not involved in the compensation for Rick Meyer. It's come out multiple times. I've always heard it, and multiple times it's said. The Bears were planning on drafting Tony Gonzalez in the first round. They needed a tight end. They even went out and drafted a tight end in round 2 in John Allred, and he sucked. They loved Tony Gonzalez. They wanted Tony Gonzalez. They had the 11th pick in the draft. And then Wannstedt says, yeah, I guess we'll give it a shot with Rick Meyer. And Mike McCaskey gives up a first-round pick for Rick frickin' Meyer. And there goes Tony Gonzalez. Now, the other rumor is not only did the Bears want Tony Gonzalez, but they also wanted Jake Plummer in round 2. That's how they were going to deal with the tight end situation, and they needed a young quarterback. That was the plan. But Mike McCaskey, after Wannstedt goes, yeah, sure, we'll do Rick Meyer, gives up a first-round pick for a guy who was already a bust. The Seahawks, Randy Mueller was in their front office. They laughed. They couldn't believe it that the Bears gave up a first-round pick. Of course, Meyer, horrendous, lost a first-round pick for nothing. So then they bring in Mark Hatley to kind of run things as the de facto general manager. Not an actual general manager still. Mike McCaskey's in charge. That, results in Cade McNown, more crap. Finally, Mike McCaskey, after 15 years, goes, I guess we need a general manager. Let's go with Jerry Angelo. And things instantly got better with Jerry Angelo. So, Evan, all I can say is Mike McCaskey thought he was good enough to run the Bears, and he ran them into the ground. And that dates all the way back to George Halas hiring Mike Ditka without consulting his general manager. All right, let's see. Do we have any others? Oh, Chris Krogman wanted me to comment on this story. It's from Andrew Balboa. And it's, and Andrew Balboa is saying that Virginia McCaskey murdered Muggs Halas to get control of the team in the 1970s. Now, this conspiracy theory has been out there for, if you guys aren't aware, this conspiracy has existed for 40 years. And the Halases, the actual Halases, suspected things. And then in 1987, they dug up Muggs's body, and he didn't have any organs, which does happen when you do autopsies, but they're usually replaced, but there was sawdust. So they assume that he was poisoned. And this whole thing becomes this wild conspiracy theory that Virginia McCaskey and her husband, Ed, murdered George Jr. Muggs so they could get control of the football team. Now, anyone I've ever talked to says that Virginia McCaskey is a sweet lady. Certainly shouldn't be running a franchise, a football franchise, but a sweet lady. So do I think that she murdered her brother? No, I do not. Do I think her husband murdered his brother-in-law? No, I do not. I don't know what happened. It is whatever. Lawyers and whatever say it's weird what happened in 1987. I think it was 87 with the additional autopsy, but I am certainly not going to sit here and pretend that these conspiracy theories have any legs to them. They have existed for 40 years. This is nothing new. All right, let's wrap up the podcast. Let's do a prediction. Monday Night Football, Vikings. The Bears are going to lose because that's what they do. This one's in Minnesota. I may as well tell you, I'm doing the post-game show. So join me after the game for a bunch of misery. We'll talk about it Monday night when I should be sleeping, talking about this stupid team and why I continue to watch them. But the Bears are going to lose. I think it'll be better than it was last week. The Bears are going to be on national television. I think there has to be some pride in this roster, some pride in what they're doing. So I think the Bears do go out, compete a little bit. I don't think it'll be as close as it was in Chicago where they got it to overtime. The spread's about 7 points. That's probably about where it lands. So I'll be in a cop-out. I say the Bears lose this one 27-20. And it's probably maybe the Bears, maybe they're down 10 points, 14 points, get a late score to cut it to 7. Not really that competitive, but not humiliating. So I don't expect the Bears. I think the Bears are going to find a way to win one more game. I just feel like they're not going to have this kind of a losing record the rest of the way. But again, I don't expect the Bears to do much of anything. So Bears lose 27-20. Caleb Williams will look a little better this week. The defense will look a little better, but nothing will look too spectacular. We will do it all again next week. Bear down, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Adios.